Good evening. Welcome to the Municipal Candidate Forum for City Commission, seat number 2. I'm so happy to see so many residents here and applaud your engagement in the local election process, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend here tonight. A big thank you to the sponsor of the event, the Tarpon Springs Board of Commissions, and especially Irene Jacobs for organizing tonight's forum. My name is Christy Kavarik with the League of Women's Voters of North Pinellas, and I'm honored to be here tonight as the moderator. I have several fellow League members here with me tonight. At the information table, we have Jacqueline Farrell, Chris Taylor, Diane Hall, and Tanya Landry, our president, is down front with me. Our timekeeper for the evening is Sue Cornett. The League of Women's Voters is over 100 years old and was born out of the suffrage movement, which advocated for a woman's right to vote. The League is a nonpartisan grassroots organization. We do not support or endorse political candidates. Our mission is simple: empowering voters and defending democracy. We envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. The League encourages voter registration, voter education, and participation in elections. We produce a factual voter guide available publicly on vote411.org, which many of you have probably used in the past. We would love to have you consider becoming a member, and that includes the men in the audience. When you arrived, you passed the information table with index cards for you to write down questions for the candidates. If you have a question for the candidate tonight, please fill out an index card and leave it with one of the members of the League. Tonight, we are here to listen to the candidates and get insights on how these candidates stand on local issues so you can make an informed decision on Election Day, March 10th. Other dates to keep in mind is January 24th is the deadline to mail overseas ballots. January 29th to February 5th is the deadline to mail domestic ballots. February 9th is the last day to register to vote. And February 26th is the deadline to request an absentee ballot by 5 p.m. Before we introduce the candidates, I want to go over the candidate ground rules for the audience and the candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement and tell you about themselves and their goals as your commissioner. Once the introductions have been completed, it will be followed by a round of questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. Questions will be rotated between the 3 candidates to ensure each gets a chance to go first. At the end, each candidate will be provided with 2 minutes to summarize their candidacy. Our timekeeper, Sue, will provide a notice at 30 seconds and 15 seconds prior to the 1 minute expiring, followed by a stop notice when time has expired. And one more reminder, we have index cards for anyone wishing to submit a question. All questions are reviewed by the moderator, and none of the questions have been shared with the candidates. Questions of a personal nature are discouraged, and we ask that all questions focus on issues of importance to the city of Tarpon Springs and the candidate's perspective on these topics. We will attempt to get all the questions as time permits. 90 minutes has been allotted to complete the forum. This is not a debate. Candidates will not respond to each other's responses, and we ask the audience to refrain from clapping until we wrap up and not to shout out questions or comments during the forum. All right, now let me introduce the candidates participating tonight. Vasile Kumendoras, Craig Lunt, and Lori Weaver. We're ready to begin. Candidate Kumendoras, I'm going alphabetical. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters of North Pinellas County for hosting tonight's forum, and to everyone here for being engaged in local democracy. My name is Vasilia Komanduras, and I am a candidate for Tarpon Springs City Commissioner Seat 2. My connection to Tarpon Springs is both personal and long-standing. My family has been a part of this community since the early days of the sponge industry. My great-grandfather supported the sponge divers by making the diving helmets. They depended on this for safety because the helmet is very important that it doesn't leak and they can see well, and it's not heavy. He made all those accommodations. His daughter Irene and her husband Nick Nicholas, my grandparents, donated the land that became Sunset Beach, so it would remain public and for future generations. I share this not to look backwards, but to explain to the voters what has shaped me: responsibility, service, and care for this community. Professionally, I have worked in roles that require accountability, clear thinking, and follow-through. I understand how important it is to ask the right questions, review the details, and make decisions for standing up over time. I am running because Tarpon Springs is facing real challenges: flooding, growth, infrastructure, and protecting what makes our city special requires planning, transparency, and steady leadership. I believe that we can plan better for flooding, spend taxpayers' monies wisely, and make decisions openly with residents at the table.
All right, thank you. Candidate Lunt, you're next.
Good evening and welcome. And thank you for League of Women Voters, the City of Tarpon Springs for hosting the events, and to the other candidates for their attendance. And thank you, audience, for being here. My name is Craig Lunt, and once again, I'm running to be your commissioner for Seat 2 in the upcoming elections. As many as you might remember, I previously held this seat for 2 terms, both as commissioner and as vice mayor in 22 and 23. I also represented Tarpon Springs in the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. I'd like to start, however, by setting the record straight about some misunderstandings that you may have. I did not quit at the end of 2023 because I had a choice. I resigned because the newly passed Form 6 filing requirements required me to specifically name my major clients. I work in network and cybersecurity. By doing so, I would have breached certain non-disclosure agreements with those clients. As I could not legally or ethically do that, I could also not ignore the new Form 6 requirements. My only choice at that time was to resign. Thankfully, since then, and though the requirement for Form 6 filing has since been blocked by a federal judge, I no longer work with those clients and would be free to file without violating any contracts. In closing, in my previous terms, I did my utmost to listen to the community requirements. I strove to bring a balanced, detailed, and pragmatic viewpoint of those requirements to the commission, our city, and to faithfully represent our city to the greater county and Tampa Bay area. With your approval, I look forward to doing so once again. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to addressing your questions as best I can.
Thank you. And Candidate Weaver, your turn.
My name is Lori Weaver, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to address my friends and neighbors this evening. First and foremost, I'd like to give credit to the existing commission for the way they have conducted the business of the city this past year. It is in sharp contrast to 2 years ago, when the board was rife with contention and mistrust. We need solid commitment. We can't go back to those years. This is what compelled me to run in this election. And to keep the positive momentum our mayor has set into motion. C2 is presently held by Frank DiDonato. Frank is a friend, past mayor and commissioner. And he's known for his thoughtful and reasonable approach to the business of our city. This commission seat must be held by someone who is equally capable, knowledgeable, and reasonable. There is no learning curve in city government. You must be ready to hit the ground running. I've been active in this community since I've lived here. I am presently a member of the Planning and Zoning Board and have logged over 650 hours volunteering here in this community. Professionally, as an officer in the Merchant Marine and ship's captain, I am used to making difficult decisions under pressure, and being knowledgeable and prepared is paramount. I would bring that leadership role to the commission. I have also owned and operated a mechanical contracting company, and that experience mimics the running of a city. I don't think either of my opponents can say they've ever had to make a payroll, manage a large staff, or run their own business. Now that I'm retired, I have the luxury of giving back to the community I live in and have approached that with the same fervor as I did with my career. And running for commissioner is a natural next step for someone with my experience who is searching for additional ways to serve the community that I love. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll begin with the questions. We have 6 or 7 questions that were all very similar, so I'm kind of lumping them together here. Candidate Kumandoras, what past experience or skills do you possess that will help you be successful as Commissioner of Tarpon Springs?
I have my master's in psychology. I was rape crisis program coordinator for all of Pinellas County. I also was program director of a partial hospitalization program, which is quite a large, substantial budget. I am able to make decisions based on fact and not emotion. I have the Tarpon Springs residents' best interest at heart, and I will do my best to always communicate with the residents and have transparency and work well with my fellow commissioners.
All right. Candidate Lunt, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
What past experience or skills do you possess that will help you be successful as Commissioner of Tarpon Springs?
Okay, well, for starters, I've been on this board before. I served as a commissioner in 22 and again as a commissioner in 23, and I was selected as vice mayor for both of those years. So I know how the city operates, I know how the board operates, I know how things are done. I'm used to listening to Tarpon Springs. I'm used to getting into the details about what's presented to the commission. Anybody here who knows me knows that I spend a lot of time researching and making sure that I make the best decision for the city as the practical knowledge that I have. So I'm willing to do that again. I'm wanting to do that again. And I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
All right. Candidate Weaver, do you want to repeat the question?
No, I'm
Okay.
As an officer in the Merchant Marine and ship's captain, knowledge and preparedness is key. You have unknowns that can be perilous, and yet you're expected to keep calm and carry on. This resolve taught me to think ahead, anticipate the worst, and be thankful when there is smooth sailing. I've known responsibility, and I'm ready to rise to that occasion. Combined with my business and construction experience, I have a well-rounded arsenal to draw from. I didn't enter this race for a title. I'm here because I've spent years listening and learning along the way. What I bring to this role is good judgment, built from experience, working through the challenges of owning a business and navigating stormy seas. Thank you.
All right, thank you. On to question number 2, Candidate Lunt. What city services do you believe needs the most immediate attention or funding?
Okay, so that's a difficult question because they always all need funding. I think the most pressing one is the projects department to take care of the flooding that we have in the sponge docks. I mean, this is a project that's been pending for more than a couple of years. It's gone up from somewhere around $1 million to over almost $5 million at last count. And I personally don't think the design has been well done. But I think they need the funding to be able to accomplish that. We've gone out for a loan to get other projects done. We need to spend some time in actually taking care of this problem. Thank you.
All right. Candidate Weaver?
I believe infrastructure and stormwater are important issues for us in the next couple of years. Economic vitality, I think, is something we should be addressing. But back to infrastructure and stormwater, Commission presently has something on the table that could mitigate some of the water down at the sponge docks. There are plans for several of the roads that have experienced stormwater to be repaired to where the stormwater does not present a problem. This is all happening because our mayor had the foresight to borrow money and try to correct the infrastructure now. It had been long neglected. I think it's time that we work on that. Thank you.
Okay. Candidate Kumin-Doris, you want me to repeat the question?
No, it's okay. I also agree that flooding is a key issue in Tarpon Springs. Hurricane Helene was very devastating to a lot of residents, and they're still not in their homes. I personally know people who are still repairing their homes. The sponge docks is still having issues. They're having a hard time renting their places because they're not fixed to rent. They're still working on them. We cannot have this flooding all the time. It's got to stop, and there needs to be something done sooner than later. These people need help, and this is the lifeline of Tarpon, and it needs to be taken care of.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Weaver, in light of the current commissioners updating the public comment rules during their business meetings, what would you do to promote public access and make sure every voice is heard?
Oh, thank you for that question. I think basically there are avenues today that could be explored. We need to have avenues that are useful to all of our citizens, not just a few. And maybe we should not have cut off Zoom at this time without replacing it with something. So I know that is a sore spot for some of the community. However, when we have a service that is only serving one person, then we need to seek out other alternatives to try to include everyone. Thank you.
Candidate Kumin-Doris?
Accessibility is key, and transparency is a must. And we need to be able to have all of our community access these meetings, whether they're disabled or it's bad weather and they can't come out. I think that something should be put in place. Zoom has worked for several years since COVID, but it's expensive, and perhaps maybe something else is out there that is cheaper that we could put in its place. But definitely something needs to happen to make everything accessible for all.
Right. Candidate Lunt?
I personally think we need to increase our outreach to the community and the transparency with which we do business. I know, and I hear all the time that people just don't know what's going on. People didn't know that this was happening tonight. As far as the Zoom session is concerned, I probably would have voted to keep it, just because there's an extra level of access for people who cannot show up, and I know it's been abused, and it probably would continue to be abused, but sooner or later there's going to be a major event in this town and people are going to need access and not be able to get to commission meetings and voice their opinion, and that needs to be done. We need to do a better job of publishing our just what's happening in the community in a way that's accessible to the community. So more Facebook notices, more city output on their web pages, et cetera, would go a long way for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Doris, what are your plans or vision for the Union Academy neighborhood and working with the community groups?
Well, I had the privilege of participating in the Martin Luther King celebration, both at the breakfast and at the party afterwards at Dorset Park. It's a beautiful park, and it was so nice to see everybody come out and celebrate Martin Luther King's life and everything that he has done for the United States and for just equality. I think that although the park is beautiful, I have heard that they desire to have a splash park. If it is at all available through a grant or any kind of extra funding through Parks and Recreation, it should be looked at. This is something that the community has asked for, and I think that we should do everything we can to get it for them.
Candidate Lund?
I've always been a strong supporter of the Union Academy neighborhood. I think the people know that. I've always been a strong supporter for Cops and Kids, including the approval of the design to redo their facilities there. I was a voting board member when we decided to add the play park to Dorset Park. I visit that community quite often. I know the members of that community. I've attended their churches. I've spoken at for some eulogies at some of the deaths in that neighborhood, so I know them quite well. I'm supportive in anything that they need to get accomplished, as long as the feedback is normal. As far as things like the splash park, I agree, they probably need some. It's a long way from the other splash park and would do the world of good to do that. So I'm a big proponent of our recreational facilities anyway, so.
Candidate Weaver?
I've done a fair share of volunteering at the CAP Center and had the opportunity to speak with several of the leaders in those communities. And it seems to me like there is a bit of a disconnect that perhaps it's our responsibility to reach out. And I noticed this at the longest table, that a lot of people in the Union Academy area did not realize or did not come to that event, and that was disappointing. So I did speak with a few people with regard to how can we correct that, how can we reach out, how can we get the word out. And I think that by doing that, we can combine these communities to where we are all one.
All right. Candidate Lunt, as commissioner, what would be your 3 priorities for our town?
Okay, so my priorities are always pretty straight in line. Investing in critical infrastructure, we need to add more check valves, we need to get rid of the flooding problem on Dodecanese, enhancing city parks and recreation facilities, improvements. We added pickleball courts, we probably need to add splash parks. They need to be constantly updated and looked at, and fostering responsible economic growth and development. We need responsible development done by responsible developers and approved by a responsible commission.
Thank you. Candidate Weaver?
Infrastructure, of course, having been neglected for several years, needs to be addressed. And fortunately, those plans are being made presently. So I'd like to see that happen, as well as stormwater mitigation. I think one of the things that hasn't really been brought up here is the economic vitality, our small business vitality, and the historic preservation that we all are here for. I mean, this is why we're here. We love Tarpon, and we love its historic nature, and we need to preserve that. We need to make sure our small business is thriving. We need to increase our tourism. And if we can do those things, I believe the city will have a vitality, it'll have a renaissance, and we'll all live better for it.
Okay, candidate Doris?
Well, you can only make a first impression one time. And Tarpon is not making a very good first impression when you come down alternate 19. When you're coming south into alternate 19, it's not very attractive. And when you're leaving, it's not very attractive. So I would like to see some improvements in these areas so that when people pass through, they want to stay. I also would like to work on getting the sponge docks and the main street more cohesive and trying to work together with the tourists instead of trying to take them away from each other. And of course, infrastructure and those, the bayou needs repair. People come and see the manatees and the sidewalks are not nice. People are gonna fall into the city. This is a representation of who we are, and we need to clean house. We need to make our house pretty.
All right, thank you. Candidate Weaver, what would you recommend and advocate for to increase our seashore resilience and our urban forestry wildlife corridors?
Can you repeat that question?
What would you recommend and advocate for to increase our seashore resilience and our urban forestry wildlife corridors?
Okay, thank you. Well, I think there's plans right now for dredging. I think dredging would benefit some of the waterway areas and bring some life back to our waterways. It has to be carefully done. I mean, we have a lot of wildlife here, so it needs to be planned. Presently, local commissioners are considering a marine commission to convene, and I think we need a board with regard to overseeing our marine waterways. With regard to forestry, you know, we have an arborist, and I think she's doing a great job. I love the parks we have here. I think that we are traveling in the right direction there.
Thank you. All right, candidate Kumandoris.
Yes, being that my grandparents donated the Sunset Beach, we go out there often. And I have noticed erosion to the beach line. And it's getting smaller and smaller. When you're driving with the car, the parking lot is not so far away from the Gulf like it used to be. And there needs to be something done to protect our shoreline and to increase. Other beaches have brought sand in. I don't think our beach has brought any sand in to protect. Also, the arborist is doing wonderful. They're planting trees, and it's a beautiful place for wildlife to build nests and to live and to thrive. And it's important that we have trees because they give off the oxygen that we need. And without trees, we're not going to make it. So we need trees.
Candidate Lunt.
So everybody here knows that I'm a big fan of dredging our local cuts and our bayous. This is something that has been sitting in the city charter for many, many, many years without anything being done. To do that means that we both ecologically have to be sensitive, but it would allow these areas to flush out better. Right now, they're stagnating. They're not flushing out with the tides anymore. The marine life has gone down severely in 10 years. I live on the water, so I experience this every day. As far as the corridors for plant life and trees, et cetera, what we need to do is make sure the developers keep away from the water lines. We need to make sure that they don't encroach on them. Continually, we get variances to push and push and push into those protected areas. We need to stop that at all costs.
All right, thank you. Candidate Kumandoris, how have you contributed to Tarpon Springs in the last 6 months?
I'm very active with the Tarpon Springs Art Association. I volunteer at the Craig Park Art Show, and I attend meetings regularly to promote art in our community. I'm active in my church, and I advocate for those who can't.
Okay, Candidate Lunt?
Unfortunately, I haven't done a lot in the last 6 months with the city. We kind of withdrew from the political end, and because I have knee problems, I haven't exactly been active with the merchants' First Friday thing, which I supported for many, many years. So that's my answer.
All right, Candidate Weaver?
Well, I think most of you that know me through my volunteer work here. I'm also on the Planning and Zoning Board. I'm on the executive board of the Women's Club. I'm a member of the Garden Club, the Historical Society, the Chamber of Commerce. I volunteer for Tarpon, the Merchants Association, the Valspar Golf Tournament. I probably missed a few. But through my volunteer work, that's how I connect with this city. And it's how I connect with all of you. And most of what I learn about what your wishes are comes through my volunteer work.
Thank you. All right, Candidate Lund? If a citizen survey supported the need for a sports complex, would you support the idea?
You know, I've always supported additional recreational facilities for the city. A sports complex, especially on you know, where our old landfill was, would be an excellent idea once it's certified to be able to accept such a conflict. So I would be in support of it. Funding, however, would have to be sought for it, and it's going to be a large project. So we would really need to get our, I don't know, get everything in a row for that one.
Okay. Candidate Weaver?
Well, with regard to local recreation, I think we need to expand our programs. I'm not sure the nature of the question, meaning a sports complex that would bring outside sports in. I don't know where we would put it, but I know that our infrastructure would have to be increased. And that goes for just about any further development that we do in this city. So I wouldn't want to put the cart before the horse. We've really got to address the infrastructure if we do have any additional growth of that nature.
Okay. Candidate Kuman-Doris?
I would need to know how they were going to pay for the sports center, if it was through the budget or if it was through a grant. I think that it's very important for people to have outlets for their mental health, and that it's really good for the community. I would also like to see that it's accessible for people with all needs. And I think that as long as the funding was there and it wouldn't put a strain, because infrastructure is very important, and we do have other things that we need to have done before our next storm.
All right, thank you. Candidate Weaver, how will you make sure the city spends money wisely and doesn't waste it?
Well, as I stated before, I owned and ran a mechanical contracting company. I understand what it takes to keep a company running, to run within your budget, to make a payroll. And I feel that those experiences, they are paramount to understanding how to run a city. There's really no difference. The city is a business. We are the business of the city. And having run a business, I think it's a natural transformation.
Candidate Kuman-Doris?
Yes, I think I mentioned before that I used to be the director of a partial hospitalization program, and it was a freestanding hospital, and it takes a lot to run a hospital, as you can imagine, but you have to have compassion as well. I know that the city is a business, but it is made up of residents, and these residents have feelings, and they have families, and they have needs, and we need to balance the budget, but we need to be fiscally responsible for the future, that we don't leave debt to for the future residents to come and the new generation. We have to live within our means, even though we need to progress and make more businesses and growth, but we can't go in debt. We have to work within our means.
Candidate Lunt?
So we've done a pretty good job, I think, over the last several years that I've been paying attention. Everybody here knows that I'm detailed. I read the budget every year, line by line, while it's being developed and while it's being presented, to make sure that we're adhering to the proper things for the city. We've gone in the last couple of years from a $70 million a year budget to over $100 million a year budget. So that's a little over almost a third increase. Yeah. And yet we went out for a loan of $20 million as well. So I think that somewhere we need to start taking a critical look at where we're spending our money. I know we have a lot of infrastructure to take care of, but I'm one of those people that are going to pay attention to the details and make sure we stay on track for our current projects and make sure they're on budget and on time.
Okay, Candidate Weaver?
Can you repeat the question? Was it the same question I answered first? Yeah.
No. If elected, no, I'm sorry. How will you make sure the city spends money oh yes, I'm sorry, that is my mistake.
I'm happy to
All right.
answer it again if you want me to.
Only if you gave a different answer. All right. Candidate Kumandoris, if elected, what 3 concrete specific steps would you undertake to improve our city's financial health?
I would access our funding through the government to see what exactly we're allowed to have through local, state, and federal grant funding. I would utilize our new grant writer to write as many grants as possible, and I would not be in favor for any increase in taxes or hidden fees and water bills or anything like that.
All right, Candidate Lunt.
Could you repeat the question, please?
If elected, what 3 concrete specific steps would you undertake to improve our city's financial health?
Okay, so we've just hired a new financial director, so that's going to help the city after they get worked in. We have a mayor right now who has a financial background, which is always great for the city. As far as increasing funds for the city, right now we're kind of in flux because we don't know what the state is going to do with property taxes, which actually are somewhat close to a third of our general fund right now. So I would be paying attention to that. I would be paying attention to what we could do to offset that with state funding and state grants if that were to happen.
All right. Candidate Weaver?
I think there's always room for improvement to determine where waste may be occurring. So I would want to tighten the belt. We do have a grant writer, and we do have quite a bit of grant money that comes in, and perhaps there's more that we can access. What I wouldn't do is want to increase the millage rate. We have about potentially $7 million in homesteaded property tax that we may lose if the governor is successful in removing the property tax. And we might have to tighten belts for that. So I think it's time to look internally and see where we can increase our, or at least not spend where we don't need to. Thank you.
All right. Candidate Lunt, what are your plans to improve our corridors to the city, such as Pinellas North and South, MLK, not just Tarpon Avenue and the Sponge Docks?
Okay, so I'm a big supporter of mixed-use neighborhoods. I think the corridors of South Safford, the corridors of South Pinellas Avenue, and other areas of town should be encouraged to do mixed-use development. This is where you have retail on the bottom and living quarters at the top. So this solves two problems here. It increases the commercial viability of our neighborhoods, and it also gives our people a better place to live. Right now, you hear all the time that Tarpon Springs is too expensive to live in. This is why people are coming in from Pasco all the time. So we need to address that. The only way to do that is with better housing, more retail in our corridors, and paying attention to what actually is going on there rather than having complete shopping centers that are empty for years.
Candidate Weaver,
Would you mind repeating the question?
what are your plans to improve our corridors to the city, such as Pinellas North and South, MLK Boulevard, not just Tarpon Avenue and the Sponge Docks?
I think we need to increase our incentives for small business to settle here. I don't want to see large development in those corridors, but we do need a way to encourage small business to open, and I believe when you do that, the corridors take care of themselves. We need to extend that to residential homes, to affordable housing. There's a lot of opportunity here for growth without it being excessive. And once that's done, I believe the economic vitality in the city would increase.
All right. Candidate Kumin-Doris.
Yes, this goes back to a previous comment that I had made, that you can only make a first impression once. And I think that most people are visual. And if we can make alternate 19 look better by regulating the signs and how high signs are and how much they take up space, nothing is uniform. If there's some kind of a sign ordinance, and we should plant palm trees or something to make things look prettier. And I think that there should be that, we should follow the SMART plan and work with the wetlands and not put buildings on wetlands. And we should worry about traffic and what these new businesses are going to do to our already congested intersections. And we should beautify our community and take care of our community as much as we can.
All right, thank you. Candidate Weaver, are you involved in any community projects or organizations?
Well, as I stated before, I sit on the Planning and Zoning Board here. I volunteer extensively. I'm on the executive board of the Women's Club. I literally can't think of all the things that I volunteer for, but I'm very involved in the community because for me, that was my outlet when I retired. I came here and I really wanted to immerse myself in the community. And I did do that. Now I just feel like it's a natural transition to move into something where I can affect change even more.
Okay. Candidate Kumin-Doris.
Well, I volunteer with the Tarpon Springs Art Association, and I do the Craig Park Art Show. I volunteer through my church, and I help people on an individual basis that needs help, whether it's advocating for someone less fortunate or helping the elderly cope with being displaced with Hurricane Helene. My volunteer hours are not in an organized setting where they could be publicly monitored or whatever, but it's it's a personal thing, and a community is one person at a time. And I help a lot of people.
Thank you. Candidate Lund?
Okay, so currently, I'm not of a mind that volunteering your life away is a way to really help your city. I think being a responsible citizen, supporting the city, and being on the board is enough work by itself. And currently, I am not retired. I work for a living. As I said before, I'm a network and cybersecurity analyst. I help school systems and both large and small throughout the state, and that keeps me quite busy. Thank you.
All right. Candidate Kumandoris, how would you handle the water bill deposit refunds? Currently, it is there for years and only refunded after the account is no longer needed.
Well, I was at a city commissioner meeting when a lady brought that up, and she was very upset that her life expectancy was longer and that she was never going to see this money in her life, and that she could use it now and she wasn't going to get it until much later. So I think that it needs to be addressed. I'm willing to discuss it with the financial board of, with the water department and see how they would like to handle it. Maybe we can do one section at a time, so there's not a big burden on the water department. But I think it needs to be done.
All right, Candidate Lund?
As far as I'm aware, and I stand to be corrected, the current deposit money for the water and services doesn't go into actual operations for the water and services. It sits in a fund which gathers interest, and the city doesn't do much with it. So I'm a proponent of having a time base where we actually do refund that to the citizens. I understand that, yes, it's nice for the city to get interest in all this, and maybe they do reflect it back to the actual account owners, but I think at some time the principal needs to be returned as well.
All right, Candidate Weaver?
Other municipalities will take a deposit on your utilities, and after a certain amount of time, as long as you've paid your bill on time, they'll refund it to you. I think that's a proper way to accept a deposit and return it back to the customer. I would advocate 100% that we don't need to keep those deposits with customers paying their bill on time. And I was actually at the commission meeting when that was brought up and surprised to have learned that myself. So that does have to change.
All right. Candidate Lunt, what is your plan to complete the Anklote Federal Channel Maintenance Dredge?
To complete the actually Anklote Federal Channel, that's the outer cuts that haven't been done yet. So this is scheduled by the Army Corps of Engineers. I believe it's scheduled for sometime in early 27. And it's really out of our hands at this particular point since they're funding it and actually doing it themselves. On other dredging matters, we've actually gone in for the design and the bathysphere scoping for the other cuts and inner channels. That design was asked to be more complete and was redone. I think now we need to take a hearty look at actually doing that dredging. We have a spoil site that was heavily fought for. We might as well start using it.
All right, Candidate Weaver?
The federal navigation channels would not fall under our auspice. Some of the inner channels, it is actually a shame that we have some very expensive real estate that is on the water and people cannot access their docks. The city charter suggests that these are supposed to be dredged timely. We haven't dredged for decades. So it's time. We have budgeted some money. Hopefully additional money will be budgeted, but I'm an advocate for dredging these inner channels We are a boating community, and we need to allow people the enjoyment of those waterways.
All right. Candidate Kumandoras?
Yes, I agree with everyone else up here saying that the dredging, the original question was for the Army Corps of Engineers, and that's not our responsibility, but we can assist them in any way. But I agree with dredging on a continual basis, like it says in the charter. We used to be called the Venice of the South, for those of you who've been around long enough to know that. And we need to keep our waterways working, and we need to take care of the people who live on the water. And we need to take care of our roads, because when the roads flood, they deteriorate, and you get potholes, and your cars, it's just a problem, and we need to take care of it. Thank you.
All right. Candidate Weaver, what are your thoughts on opening South Diston Avenue to Belcher Avenue?
Well, I've had this conversation with several people that live in that particular neighborhood. And what I have discovered is there are mixed feelings throughout the neighborhood itself about whether to open that road. I think we can agree that when it was closed, it was probably closed for the wrong reasons. And I would be open to opening the road. However, when I spoke with several of the leaders in that community, I didn't get the impression that they wanted to open the road. So what we would really need to do is have a community forums in that area and find out what their wishes are and proceed that way.
All right. Candidate Kumandoras?
We need to have city meetings, town meetings, to find out if this is something that the neighborhood would like. And if it's not, what is the reason that they don't want it? Is it that they're worried about the speed limit, or they're worried about the quality of their neighborhood going down with the extra traffic? What is the reason that they don't want it, if in fact they don't want it? And if it isn't something that we can come to some type of an agreement with, then we probably should table it. But if it's, I believe that through communication, you can reach a decision, and it'd be best for the whole community, not just the neighborhood, but for the whole community.
All right. Candidate Lund?
Actually, I'm on record as being against pushing Diston through to Belcher. And we've done the studies. I did the walk with several other members of the community. We talked about the neighbors. We did the whole Diston corridor thing several years ago. Currently, as I understand it, we've applied for grants to be able to improve the sidewalks and walkability in the pathway between Belcher and Diston. Anyway, during the initial stuff, there's 29 homes on the south side on the road, actually, on the south side of Belcher, Diston area. None of those people want to see it through. I know, and you know, that as soon as that turns into another Belcher highway, that those homes are going to be disregarded. They'll get torn down. They'll build apartment buildings, and traffic will only get worse. On the north side, there's a lot of kids. There's cops and kids centers.
All right. Thank you. All right. Candidate Kumandoras. The state has passed quite a bit of legislation impacting local government with respect to development, taxes, and even language. How will you fight for local control?
Well, without knowing specifically what they've changed and what you're referring to, I would, I'm not sure I understood the question, but I'm going to try and answer it the best way I can. I would meet with the fellow commissioners and see what they think about what needs to be done. Everybody needs to be on a committee and understand the group as a whole And I don't know what language you're referring to. Is it like Gulf of America or Gulf of Mexico? I don't know. That's kind of broad. I don't really have a handle on it. Or if it's pronouns, or I don't know what you mean by that. So I don't know where to go with this answer. So if I understood the question better, I would be able to give you a better answer. But I would do my best on advocating for what the residents of Tarpon Springs would want, and not necessarily just what other people want.
Okay. Candidate Lunt.
You know, the state over the past several years under the current administration has continued to nibble away at home rule. They've changed some of our environmental laws. They've changed some of the things we can and can't do with development. Things like they can sue us if they think we've affected their business by making certain decisions, that sort of stuff. This idea that they're going to remove a portion of homestead taxes and so forth is only going to affect that to the negative. What happens when we need money? There's no local support. We have to go to the state all the time for support. That is not going to work out, and it's going to be politicized greatly, I guarantee you. Every time we have to go to the state for another dollar, there's going to be a political commitment that comes along with it. I'm against it. I think we need to improve home rule by reaching out to our legislators and making sure that this doesn't happen.
All right. Candidate Weaver.
So this question regards home rule. And home rule basically means the city is intended to have a broader power than the state. However, I think we could all agree that the state continues to infringe on the city's power. One of the ways that disturbs me the most is your permit department. So there's a lot of things that we can't do that make no sense to us, and yet it's based on the rules that the state has implemented. So I think what has to happen is we need to stand our ground. We need to address our representatives, and we need to keep whatever powers here in the city that we can.
Okay. Candidate Lunt. What is your approach for preserving and maintaining the historical authenticity of the historic district?
I think we need to have a strong historical preservation board, which needs to be shored up and actually needs to communicate with the Board of Commissioners more than they actually do. We're a historic city. Just because we're old doesn't need to mean that we need to be shabby. So it needs to be improved. It needs to be constantly kept up, but we also need to adhere to certain guidelines that mean we don't infringe upon the historical character of our city too much. So zoning regulations, FAR rates are changing. We need to make sure that these kind of things, even though we're trying to move ourselves into the future, don't destroy our historical past. It needs to be preserved, and the only way it can be preserved is by doing zoning regulations, making sure our Heritage Preservation Board is on top of things and knows what they're talking about, and has the support of the Board of Commissioners.
Okay. Candidate Weaver.
So my campaign's tagline is improving our future while respecting our past. And a lot of you that know me know that I live in a 1916 home on Tarpon Avenue. I purchased the Kelly house, and over the last 2 years, I've been restoring it. I purchased that house, my husband and I, because we felt it was the gateway into Tarpon Avenue in the city. And it was important for us to set an example, hoping that others would follow. I think we need consistency on our historic board, those that are making decisions for people who are trying to improve these historic homes. I don't know that every historic home can be saved. Some have been neglected. But the ones that are significant and important, I believe we need to save.
Candidate Kumandoris.
The historical part of Tarpon Springs is key because our whole charm of Tarpon Springs is what makes us different from other towns in the area. It's so important to preserve the buildings. We travel a lot, and when we go to Italy or we go to Greece, you see buildings that are thousands of years old, not hundreds of years old, or not even 100 years old. And there's no reason why we can't preserve. There should be grants available for people to help them to preserve their properties, especially with flooding and everything, Lord. It's important to keep the charm of Tarpon.
All right, thank you. Candidate Weaver. Would you advocate new city rules limiting or restricting the number of Airbnbs?
Well, that's a controversial question. I think that one of my mandates is to increase tourism. There are certainly areas that an Airbnb should not exist in. My record stands on the Planning and Zoning Board for having voted against Airbnbs in those areas. But there are areas in our city that I think we should encourage that type. How can we expect people to come, spend their money here, enjoy our city, and want to return if we don't give them accommodations? The two must work together. So I would be in favor of zones and areas that will allow them, but residential neighborhoods, I believe, should be off limits.
All right. Candidate Kumandoris.
Yes. There's a lot of guidelines that we could use with the Airbnbs. There could be minimum requirements, maximum people staying in the home. What you don't want to see is 25 people staying in one home and the neighbor is having a nightmare because they're partying all night long. On the other hand, we don't have a lot of hotels in the area yet. Thank God we're going to be having one soon called the Registry, but it's much needed. We have inns that they could stay at, and we need to just have regulation. It's important to have rules.
Candidate Lunt.
It's another hot topic, isn't it? People want Airbnbs because it gives the tourists a place to stay and gives you an alternative. People don't want B&Bs or Airbnbs because you tend sometimes to have the party crowd and the overthink. I'm kind of like ambivalent about it. I think we have areas now that you allow, or where we allow Airbnb type situations in residential communities where we don't. I think that's a good start. I'm not sure that the regulations on the current Airbnbs are strict enough in some cases, and in some cases I think they're too strict. So I think they need to be reviewed almost on a continual basis because things do change.
Okay. All right, candidate Kumandoris. What is the city doing to improve its FEMA CRS rating, community ratings system, community rating, to provide better flood insurance discounts? The city currently has a CRS rating of 15, which provides up to 25% discount. However, unincorporated Pinellas County has a better CRS rating, giving its residents up to 40% discount in their flood insurance.
We should look to other coastal communities to see what they're doing and see if it's working for them, that we should give it a try. Because for those of us that live on the water, it's very expensive to have flood insurance, and some places aren't even able to insure. And FEMA, it hasn't, in my personal opinion and in my experience, FEMA has not been as generous to us as they could have been and should have been. And a lot of people that I know are elderly and did not get any money or very little money from FEMA, and they're struggling, and that shouldn't be.
Candidate Lund?
I'm going to be on the side of that. I don't think FEMA is the total answer here. I think a 25% discount off FEMA rates might be decent for FEMA, but it's not so good for the community itself. Personally, I live on the water. I have flood insurance, and I had to get mine from a private basis because the FEMA cost was just ridiculous. So I went out and I found a private company that actually gave me better insurance than FEMA would. So I think that needs to be encouraged to take a look at it. From going from a 25 to a 30% discount rate against FEMA, we have a resiliency coordinator. I think she could probably do a better job of explaining what needs to be done than I.
Candidate Weaver?
Well, I can remember having a home on the water and paying $600 a year in flood insurance. We know that you can't have a house on a hill today and pay $600 in flood insurance. So while I feel like this question may be better suited for our state legislature, I think that, recently they have redesigned the FEMA flood plains, and I have not had a chance to see how that affected this area. Perhaps we can petition for some kind of a change. But I think this is a state representative issue, and maybe that's the answer.
Okay. This question goes along with that one. Candidate Lunt? Many homes are in violation of FEMA regulations. The garages below the base flood elevation have been converted to living space. These violations are keeping the city from improving their CRS rating, and it is hurting the residents.
Okay, so people build raised houses where it's supposed to be open down below to handle floodwaters. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't put something down there, and they're allowed to put things down there. What they have to realize is they can't put self-contained rooms down there because the floodwaters have to pass through. This gets ignored all the time, and if it's one of the reasons that we only have a 25 versus 30% rating, I don't know how we can actually manage that without actually having a building inspector go around and sanction these people. And I don't think as well that that's going to work. So I don't think there's much that we can be done. People are too used to doing that.
Candidate Weaver?
Well, I'm of the mindset that you should be entitled to do with your property mostly what you wish. It would be a lot to ask people to have that amount of square footage and not make some use of it. Closing it in, obviously, is not going to be advantageous to anyone during a flood. Again, I think this is not something that as city government can really address without involving code enforcement, which I don't think would be very popular among the residents here. But it may be an issue for our state representatives.
All right, Candidate Kuman-Doris?
Well, I'm on the line of believing that if you own your home and you want to put something underneath there, that you should understand that if it floods, it might get wet. So you don't put anything down there that you don't want to ruin. And you could move things. We have plenty of time when a hurricane is coming. We get notice. It's not like a tornado. You could just move anything that is valuable that's under there and move it to higher ground so that if wind water comes in, it doesn't get destroyed. You would not put flooring down like carpeting or anything like that because it would get damaged. So tile, things like that would clean nicely even if it were to flood. You cannot mandate, you're not gonna go around door to door and bang on people's doors to see what they have underneath in their room. And we live in the United States of America, and we're free to do things like that still.
All right, candidate Weaver, if elected, what would you do about our homeless population at the Shepherd Center?
Well, I volunteer at the Shepherd Center, and I do have a soft spot for people who do not have a roof over their head. I have spent time talking to the director there, and she would like to move the facility. So it's not an impossible process to perhaps consider moving that facility elsewhere and allowing that corridor to rejuvenate. It needs a business plan. It needs partners. It needs the community. It needs help in order to make that happen. Perhaps the city has a piece of land somewhere. She can put a business plan together, and we can actually make something happen. Thank you.
All right, candidate Kuman Doris.
As a community, I feel like we do have a responsibility for those that are less fortunate and those in need, and we should help. And if they want to find another location because they feel that that location is no longer meeting their needs, then we should try. And maybe we can ask churches to see if they'll be involved too, and we'll get a community together. These people need help. They're not homeless because they want to be homeless. Not all of them anyway. And some of them are families, and they need to have housing. We need to take better care of our homeless. As a community, it's what is needed.
All right, candidate Lund.
You know, we've discussed this before, both as a community and as a board. One of the things that's suggested is, yes, the Shepherd Center needs to move, requires to move. What the Shepherd Center did at the time was send a letter to the board asking for not only a place, but funding in order to build a new facility, something that we could not do at the time. I think we still need to continue towards that end, though. One of the things that was mentioned when we were developing for a spoil site was that part of that spoil site could be used for Shepherd Center. That never came to fruition, or at least hasn't been further discussed. My thoughts were that might be a little bit too far out of town, but we need to continue to work with the Shepherd Center in order to be able to move them to a more appropriate place.
Right. Okay. Candidate Kuman Doris, are you in favor of the city contributing in any way financially to events and activities sponsored by the Merchants Association if you were asked?
If the city has funds that is available to promote business, then they should promote all business to the Merchants Association and all businesses that have asked for their help. Yes, I think that it's for the betterment of the economy of Tarpon and will promote business.
Candidate Lund?
You know, I'm not, could you repeat the question, please?
Are you in favor of the city contributing in any way financially to events and activities sponsored by the Merchants Association if you were asked?
You know, I'm not sure that the Merchants Association needs our sponsorship from a financial perspective. If they were to ask for it, it would depend on the certain circumstances that they were asking for it. So while I wouldn't arbitrarily just say no, I wouldn't arbitrarily just say yes either. It would depend on the specific circumstances. The Merchants Association has been a valued member of our community for some time. They have large events which bring a lot of people to our city. I'm not sure exactly what the financial offshoot of that is for our local stores and so forth, but it's a thing that draws people and lets people know about Tarpon Springs. So they're a good organization to do that. I support them. Financially, I think, again, it would depend on the circumstances of the request.
All right. Candidate Weaver?
Well, I'm very appreciative of the Merchants Association and what they do for the city. I have concerns that if we are going to sponsor one agency, we're going to need to sponsor all agencies. So I would like to find alternate ways, and perhaps some of those ways could be by discounting the police, the other agencies that help serve a First Friday event or other events that they do. And maybe with that respect, we could help them. As far as the city giving any agency money directly, I think what you do for one, you'd have to do for all. And I'm not sure we're in a position to do that.
Okay. Candidate Lunt, how do you handle public criticism or controversial issues?
How do I handle public criticism or controversial issues? Well, it depends if it's face-to-face or through a social media thing. So what I try to do is consider it and usually try to just, if it's criticism, either take it to heart or ignore it, depending on whether I think it's valid or not.
All right, Candidate Weaver?
Well, we live in that world today with social media, don't we? So you have to have a thick skin to do this job. Without a thick skin, not only will you be miserable, but you have to uphold what you think is right. You can't be influenced by, the murmurings of people that have perhaps nefarious intent. So I have a thick skin, but I always find that criticism can lead to something constructive. And if you look at it that way, you can use it to the best of your ability.
All right, Candidate Kuman-Doris?
If the criticism is valid, I would look at it to grow from it. If it's not valid and they're just mean-spirited, I would just ignore it and go on. I would not confront it because I think it would just engage it and then it would grow into something that you don't want to deal with. So sometimes you have to hear things that you may not want to hear, and maybe they're right. And sometimes people just aren't nice and they have an ulterior motive, and you just have to weigh that out. But blessed is the peacemaker, so I would try and get along with people.
Okay, this will be our last question before we go to closing statements. Candidate Weaver, how would you prioritize these three local issues? 1, 2, 3. Economic growth, public safety, resident involvement.
Well, having been a business person, I think economic growth is paramount. I think without economic growth, the other issues have little hope. I'm all for a strong police and fire department. I think that without that, your city citizens just simply aren't going to feel safe. You're not going to grow. It's not going to be advantageous. But I think the economic growth by increasing tourism is vital here in Tarpon, and that's in my platform, and that's where I stand on it.
Okay, Candidate Kuman-Doris?
Well, being a licensed mental health counselor, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, safety and security is number one. Because if you're not safe and secure, you're not going to have residents because they're going to move. And you're not going to have to worry about economy and growth because no one's going to be here because no one wants to go there. So I would say that would be mine. Thank you.
All right, Candidate Lunt.
Could you repeat the question, please?
How would you prioritize these 3 local issues, 1, 2, and 3? Economic growth, public safety, resident involvement.
Okay, so I'm a big supporter of public safety, and I agree that without a safe environment to be in, neither economic growth nor citizen involvement is going to happen, because the citizens won't feel safe. We're a tourist economy, tourists won't feel safe. You need that public safety undergrowth. For number 2 and 3, I think citizens' involvement is number 2. I think citizen involvement will drive economic growth.
Okay. For closing statements, you each will get 2 minutes, and Candidate Lunt will go first.
I just want to thank you all for attending. There's been a wealth of questions asked. I encourage you to vote. Whether you vote for any of us, please come out and vote. Thank you.
Okay, Candidate Weaver.
I'd like to also thank everyone for coming out. This is really, it's been a real pleasure to see this auditorium with this many people in it. I think it speaks to our commissioners, our mayor, and the direction that our city is going. Our commissioners form a representative form of government. That means that you place your trust in a candidate, and we must become your voice. That candidate needs to be active and involved in the community. That will always include learning what the concerns of the residents are in order to effectively vote and steer the city. We must find practical solutions, all while keeping our history and preserving what is special to Tarpon. My background gives me the readiness and the experience to make informed decisions on behalf of our residents. I am humbled by their support of my campaign, and I look forward to serving the community in a new role. This doesn't come from grandstanding. It comes from showing up, asking good questions, being involved, and working together, even if we don't agree. My campaign tagline is improving our future while respecting our past. And our past defines who we are historically. This should not be discounted or diluted. It is who we are. And yet, progress is what will improve our future while respecting our past. I appreciate you all coming out. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, Candidate Kumin-Doris.
This election is different because we're the only one on the ballot. And we need people to come out and vote. And even if you vote absentee, you have to apply, because every 2 years you have to reapply. So it's very important that we vote, because if you don't vote, you can't complain. So my commitment is simple. I will show up prepared, do the work, and put the interests of Tarpon Springs first. Not special interests, not politics, the people who live here. I respectfully ask for your support and for your vote. Vote for Vasilia Komandouris for City Commissioner Seat 2. God bless Tarpon Springs and its residents.
All right. Yes, they deserve applause. Just a few reminders on dates. January 24th is the deadline to mail overseas ballots. January 29th through February 5th is the deadline to mail domestic ballots. February 9th is the last day to register to vote, which we can help you, the league can help you with at our table. February 26th is the deadline to request an absentee ballot, and Election Day is March 10th. Thank you for running. It takes a lot of courage to sit up there. Thank you all for listening. Democracy only works if we all participate. Thank you again.